This is your World War III update, broadcasting from the green screen room here at the CanadianPrepper.com studio, because the subject of today is deception. The Iran war is the most telegraphed punch, I think, in history. Every single box has been checked, yet for some reason, seasoned analysts, people I respect, friends of the channel, seem to be in disbelief and denial, stricken with normalcy bias, telling themselves that the United States is just bluffing. Maybe it's because they unconsciously realize how bad this war is going to be, not just for the Iranians, but for the global economy, and they're trying to repress the obvious reality that is staring them in the face. I don't know. Maybe for some of them, it's nefarious. Maybe some of them are on the take and they're trying to lull people into a state of complacency, or maybe they're just contrarians trying to hedge their bets. I'm not sure what it is. In fact, even Patarimis, the anonymous, whoever they are, who we had on the YouTube channel, I believe it was the Prepping News today, and we had them on because they provide interesting technical insights, okay? And that's the only reason why we brought them on the channel. But even they seem to be of the persuasion that this is all a bluff, which is absurd. It's absurd. Every single box has not been checked once, twice, thrice. And as we're going to go over today, I'm going to provide you overwhelming evidence that this is a freight train. It's coming, and it's simply a matter of time as to when it is going to hit. And I think we had the icing on the cake last night at the State of the Union, and some comments made by J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio today, with the nail in the coffin, if there wasn't one already, all right? Now, I've been calling for this war, not calling for it as if wanting it, but I've been warning people about it probably longer than most channels have even been on this issue, especially in the last couple years, when it would die out in the media cycle and maybe only 1% of people were interested. We were talking about how an Iran war was imminent. I predicted it was going to happen before the last election, but I did say that if it doesn't happen on Trump's watch, never listen to what I say again, because that was a prediction that I would be willing to stake my reputation on, and I think I did on multiple occasions. And here we are, okay? Now, at the State of the Union, the only bipartisan applause that we've seen was when Donald Trump made a very brief statement about Iran's nuclear program. When he said that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, I think that was the only instance where there was unanimous applause in the room. There might have been one other thing where the Democrats stood up. Now, if you have bipartisan support to go to war, it's a done deal. Okay, not only do you have bipartisan support, you have the Israeli lobby, which is stronger than ever. The neocons are in total control of the government, total control of the U.S. government. People think Trump is draining the swamp. What? When he first said back in 2023, I made a post on X. I think it was actually early 2024, when he said that Lindsey Graham was a really great guy, and that I think there was another instance where he said that he's one of his best friends. I knew that's it. That's it. They're going to war. Whatever Lindsey Graham wants, Lindsey Graham's going to get. And, for people to be under the delusion that this guy is outside the system or outside the interests of the MIC, man, at this point, it takes willful ignorance. It must take a lot of brain power. Anyways, we have bipartisan support. We have bicameral support. Every branch of government is all on board for this thing. And if you have that, it is very hard not to get a war. Even people like AOC, who tweet out some random platitude about how, no war with Iran, they only say that because they know that eventually there's going to be an anti-war movement, and they want to be able to say, oh, I told you so. I was one of the ones who was against the war. Meanwhile, they've been fanning the flames, supporting these Iranian expat protesters who want to bring back monarchical rule and be vassals to the U.S. government, and seem to be all for having the U.S. government completely bomb their country into the Stone Ages. All right? So there's a lot of deception going on. I get it. The White House, the Pentagon, they're coming out with conflicting statements every day. That's the whole point. That's what they're supposed to do. I keep telling people, do not listen to a thing that the government says about what's going to happen, about whether the news is bullish or bearish as it pertains to the Iran war. They've already made the plan. They're amassing half the military in the region, plus all of the military that is in Israel, okay, which matches in many respects what the U.S. is bringing to bear. You add all that up, plus the UK and all the other European countries that are going to partake, and the surrounding regions, right, with all of their radicalized nut jobs, and Turkey possibly sending in troops. I mean, anything's on the table here, okay? So, yeah, this is a done deal. The Israeli lobby has never had such a tight grip on U.S. foreign policy, I don't think, in history. This is definitely one for the ages. Chuck Schumer made a statement yesterday where it was very laconic. He said something to the extent of it's going to be up to Trump, basically, to convince the American people. And when Democrats are always contrarian when it comes to anything that Trump says, when they immediately give him the green light for something, you know it's a part of a much bigger agenda. They know this is the best opportunity they're ever going to have. It's like they're in the Goldilocks zone of a planetary orbit that only happens every 10,000 years. We're here. Okay, if they don't strike now, they'll never have an opportunity like this again, and they know it. This is why today, not just today, but in the past week, I suppose, Iran and Saudi Arabia have been tripling their oil tanker outputs. Their exports have tripled, okay, in the last few weeks. They're trying to get as much out the door as they can. And even with this tripling of exports, the price of oil is still very low. Or still, I shouldn't say it's low, but it is still ticking upwards. And you'd think if they were flooding the market with all of this oil, then the price would be bid down quite a bit. But it's not. So I think that is actually artificially suppressing the price of oil. It's creating a temporary glut because they're trying to get as much out before the shit hits the fan. And we're talking about a region where 40%, it's not 20%. Everybody says 20% of the world's oil comes through here. But I was listening to a Nate Hagen's podcast, and he said that it's actually 40% of the sellable oil, okay? Because a lot of stuff is used in situ, in-house. You know, the U.S., they create a certain amount of oil, but they use most of it. So the marketable oil, the stuff that can actually be sold on the market, 40%. So imagine the bidding war that's going to start. We're not talking about $100 a barrel, possibly much higher if this thing really spirals out of control and they start hitting counter-value targets like oil refineries, and Iran does a tit-for-tat return. So we've had Netanyahu's visited the White House 7 times since, I think that's a record, okay? An Israeli leader visiting the White House 7 times. Coincidentally, every time he comes, something goes down. After he left this time, what started? The Iran protests started. Then they had their case, their casus belli, if you will, to go to war. Because we've seen the biggest orchestrated protests, I think, in Canada, in Toronto's history anyways, in a lot of these cities, probably not on the scale of the Gaza genocide protests or even the Black Lives Matter protests, but still very large and unusual, considering there ain't that many Canadians who care about that issue, if you know what I mean. Those people were conscripted to do those protests. So you have all the missile defense in place, and this stuff takes time To deploy these THAAD systems, it takes a lot of time. I don't think you're doing this deploying well over half of your interceptors that can take out Iran's most capable ballistic missiles. I don't think you're doing that and walking it back. Not that these guys are averse to just wasting people's money. They don't care. They can say, hey, if they're able to bring the Iranians to heel, then they can say, see, the weapons did their job, right? They forced compliance. But if you ask me, I think they would likely not take those assets away from other potential vulnerable places like the Indo-Pacific and even Ukraine, if that was the case. So we had Chucky Schumer's comments. We had J.D. Vance coming out today, okay? And he said the following. He said, we have detected evidence that Iran is attempting to resume the development of nuclear weapons. Really? Where did you detect that? I mean, is this just new information? It's just like how the Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, just suddenly sent Trump a memo saying, you know what? All of this military equipment that we've been moving into place, yeah, we're starting to get cold feet, and we don't think that we're going to be able to pull this off. Do you really think that they only came to that conclusion at that point? No. This is something that, this is purely for the purpose of muddying the waters. It's purely to have ambiguous messaging. And I think ultimately to try to instill some complacency in the Iranian government if they're paying attention. Now, a lot of these pundits, people I respect, analysts that we've had on the channel, they seem to be pushing this narrative that the U.S. is just bluffing. And if there's actually Iranian people who watch these people, they're getting a real false perception of what's about to happen because they're going to go all out. I mean, they smell blood in the water. Okay, Iran has never been so weak. And they, in a sense, in terms of the Israeli lobby's handle on the situation, as well as the stars aligning in a myriad ways, have never been so optimal. So we have all the assets in the region, plus whatever Israel can bring to bear, plus all the surrounding countries. We have oil, which is at a low price. People have already been conditioned. The State of the Union is now out of the way. I don't think he wanted to start a war before the State of the Union. And now I think about it, yeah, that makes sense that they waited until after this, right? And oil has been low. It's been suppressing inflation. If it wasn't for the low cost of oil, the price of everything would be through the roof. And the only reason why oil is low right now is because Russian oil is being forced down in price due to this black market shadow fleet, which is causing a lot of underbidding because in order for countries to take on the risk of bringing in Russian oil, Russia has to sell it very cheap. So these sanctions are having an effect. So the oil reserve is filling up in the United States. There never has been an opportune time. China's going to make a move soon. This is now or never for taking out Iran. They've already been somewhat weakened by the 12-day war. By other people's standards, they say that Iran has now evolved its methods because the decapitation strike attempt failed. Thus, the virus has learned its lessons and it has now evolved to counter those threats. Now you have the Iranians saying that they're about to strike a deal, or some official somewhere, this is official news, on the Politico Axios type level, that Iran is getting ready to acquire Chinese anti-ship missiles. Well, that just incentivizes the U.S. to pull the trigger faster and not hesitate, all right? So between the bicameral, the bipartisan support from everybody on down, even the soon-to-be anti-war crowd, once they make that their woke cause, okay, everybody's on board for this. And Israel is expanding their war preparations. The Iranian proxies are scattered. They're defeated. I even heard a statement today that Hezbollah says that if there is a war with Iran, they're not going to join the fight. So anybody saying that there's not going to be a war or that it's still 50-50 is, I'm going to be nice. I'm just going to say they are being way too optimistic. How about that? I'm not going to say they're a Confederate in the whole scheme. I'm just going to say they're being way too optimistic. The Ayatollah, having been attempted to be assassinated on multiple occasions. In fact, right now, the last news I heard is that, and this is one of those things, but I've heard it from multiple 75-25 sources, that he is in a secret location, and the only way you can see him, even if you are a high-ranking official, is if you put on a blindfold and somebody drives you there. So my first question to the people posting this is, okay, well, who is driving the vehicle? Who is he entrusting? There must be somebody who is very close to him, probably a family member. That's really all you can trust when you are on that level of autocrat. That would be the only person I could see who would drive these individuals to that place. But they're taking it very seriously. They have numerous redundancies in place. They're preparing for a war. We've had U.S. bases in the region in close proximity evacuated recently. U.S. embassies evacuated. I believe Dutch Airlines, or one of those countries, is ceasing air traffic come March 1st, which of course would be Sunday. And it maps on. Is it going to start this Sunday? I don't know. Right now, they're a hunter in a tree stand. They're waiting for a good opportunity. Apparently, there was a Mujahideen attempt. I'm not pronouncing it properly, but there was an attempt by some fanaticized nut jobs who wanted to take out the Ayatollah and failed, apparently. And so maybe that was part of their whole plan. I think they do have these active sleeper cells, these saboteurs on the ground, ready to make a move. And it's simply a matter of when they're going to use their zero-day exploits and go all in. But there has never been a more optimal time for them to attempt this. Never. So, and you got the Epstein thing, which is hanging over Trump's head like a sword of Damocles, right? So when you take all these things into consideration, now they're even evacuating the Bahrain naval port. All of their ships are being evacuated because that's a prime target. We've already had the precedent of regime change attempts. So in their ideal world, the Ayatollah would already not exist and the Shah would already be in power in that country. So it's all skullduggery and deception at this point to pretend as though there's not going to be a war, okay? We even have Marco Rubio today, and this is the icing on the cake. He says the following: right when Iran has agreed to downgrade their enriched uranium to 3.6%, although they said that they're not going to export it, he brings in this, even though this has always been one of the 4 criteria outlined by Witkoff. And honestly, I think you should be listening to Witkoff at this point. If Witkoff is saying that Iran is 1 week away from making a nuclear weapon, which I think they are, realistically, even Padarimi's seems to think they are, the one we had on today at Prepper News. If they are, and there's the other 4 criteria, like they got to get rid of their ballistic missile program, not only the long range, but also the short range, because the Gulf states are at risk. And, these are things that are never going to happen. So they keep moving the goalpost. Anyways, here's what Marco Rubio had to say. Iran possesses a very large number of ballistic missiles, particularly short-range ballistic missiles that threaten the United States and our bases in the region, and our partners in the region, and all of our bases in UAE and Qatar and Bahrain. Now, there ain't no way a conventional intercontinental ballistic missile is even a thing, because the juice ain't worth the squeeze. The cost to make a missile like that is not worth the conventional payload that you can put on it. Is it possible that Iran could make an EMP weapon? I think that is the weapon of choice, as David Pine indicated the other day. It would be aligned with the fatwa, which essentially precludes the use of a nuclear weapon because, of course, it causes mass death, instantaneous death. However, if you use that at a high altitude, it'll just take out the power grid that is within the line of sight, presumably, assuming that power grid is not hardened by EMP. And it's not a hard and fast rule, but yes, a lot of the transformers will be blown out. And that would be the most effective use, and you don't even have to be that accurate in that respect. So an EMP is even easier, right? So they have to be worried about the prospect of an ICBM, but really they just want regime change. They just know that this is the Goldilocks period, and I'm not even sure if it's their greed at this point. It's just that they know that if they don't do it now, it's going to be harder to do later. He goes on to say they also possess naval assets that threaten shipping and try to threaten the U.S. Navy. So I want everyone to understand, beyond just the nuclear program, they possess these conventional weapons that are solely designed to attack America and attack Americans, which is complete bullshit. Just like the idea that the number one state sponsor of terrorism, I mean, ISIS, anybody, Al-Qaeda, anybody. I mean, this is just... And the only reason why they say that is because Soleimani was, of course, instrumental in fighting the Americans during the Iraq War. But that war was an illegal war in and of itself. So you can't just say, well, we started this illegal war and then these guys in the neighboring country started to attack us because they didn't like that. And that's terrorism, right? So anyways, man, it is what it is. The war's going to start, and sooner or later, this won't even be a conversation. It will be everybody losing their shit and vicariously living through the suffering of the Iranian people who are still there. And I hope that the people who are out in the streets, I hope that you realize what you're about to do to your country. Because when they unleash all of those radicalized nut jobs into the streets and they just start tearing down all of your ancient historical relics that define what it is to be a Persian person, they're going to destroy it all. And people are going to greatly regret playing into this scheme. How can you ever trust an administration who made the case that the war against Venezuela was about drugs and then instantly switched to, it's about oil? As if there's not countless other examples of that. So I don't know, man. I think people are in denial. I think there's a lot of people who are on the take and they're trying to deceive people with this nonsense that this ain't going to go down. But it's going to go down. It's just a matter of time. So keep on prepping, because you think this ain't going to touch us. I've told you guys, this is going to touch everybody. 40% of the world's oil coming through the Strait of Hormuz. If that goes offline, can you imagine the panic? Can you imagine how fast gas prices are going to rocket? Can you imagine how fast the prices of everything are going to rocket? And then, of course, that increases the likelihood that China makes a move. Russia is dealing with this nuclear bomb accusation business that I talked about at length yesterday. Everything is flaring up at the same time. Everything that I've said is going to happen is happening, folks. It's happening. It's just on a slightly longer timeline. So if you've been here from the start, then congratulations. You're on point. And I'm not going to pander to those people who right now, I'm not sure what the exact defense mechanism is, but there's a lot of people I pissed off when Trump took office because I said that he ain't going to change a damn thing, and I called a spade, and here we are. But a lot of them resent me still, and they don't want to look reality in the face. Hey, I forgive you. Okay, I forgive you. I criticize Joe Biden. I criticize Trump. I'll criticize the next guy. Don't even get me started on the idiot that we have in Parliament right now, because then I might get into some trouble. But, hey, no hard feelings, man. But here we are. Everything I said was going to happen is happening.